Hey everybody. So this is going to be the introduction for assignment 10, which will be our advanced Grasshopper assignment. Specifically in this one, we're going to be looking at how to use Grasshopper as a analysis tool using a plugin called Ladybug that'll give us solar analysis data as well as some wind data. So we're specifically going to be looking at the site that we've already created in the previous assignments at Elm and Liberty that we're using in Studio. And I'll ask you guys to also include a very simplified version of one of your current schemes that you're working on in Studio. So in the example you see on the screen in front of you, I have two simple masses representing a potential building design that would be on site. They don't need to be quite as simple as just two perfect rectangles, but you generally don't want to include every single piece of your building. We're really concerned with sort of the overall shape and a sort of simple form. The simpler, the better. Your calculation time will just be faster in general. It is good to consider things, though, that will play a big role in the sort of solar analysis. So that would probably be trying to be accurate about roofs and their sort of shape and size and dimension if you are at the point where you started to consider that. And any sort of projection, so any sort of overhang of the roof or any sort of overhanging surface will play a big role also in the sort of solar analysis that we're going to be doing. So for this, we're going to create three different types of images. The first is going to be a solar radiation study. And this is just going to give us some information about how much solar energy is actually impacting surfaces on site. So that would be the image that you see in the upper right-hand corner, where you have two building volumes and there's actually some sort of color applied to them. Red has the most solar energy, so surfaces facing directly upwards are getting a lot of that solar energy. Vertical surfaces are less. But this can be a good study to figure out how design moves are impacting the building and where you're getting that solar energy. So if you are trying to, say, drive more solar energy to a particular part of the site, say to heat a swimming pool, then that would be a good factor to consider. Or if you're trying to limit that solar energy for environmental reasons, again, it just depends on what your intent is. The next will be a shadow study looking at a single day. So that's the largest image that you see on the left side. And this is looking at shadows cast on site every 2 hours on a single day. The final is a simple windrows diagram that you see in the bottom right-hand corner. And this is just the direction and force of the wind on site given a particular time of year. In this particular case, it is not actually taking into account the adjacent buildings, although that is something that we could do using the same software suite. It is a bit more complicated, so we're going to hold off on doing that for now. For those of you who are not enrolled in Studio, you can just use sort of simplified volumes like you see here, just a couple or three rectangular volumes on site to represent a potential building design, just to keep it simple. So first and foremost, you will have to install Ladybug as well as a couple additional files that it needs. So I've left links below, first to the website foodforrhino.com, which has is a location where you can download the actual Ladybug tools. And then two links, one for the Mac install steps as well as the PC install instructions. Finally, there is an additional set of files that you'll have to install that are just called the Radiance files, and these are just more data that Ladybug will need in order to actually calculate that solar radiation study that we're looking for. The final goal of this is to create three 11 by 17 isometric views with a set camera attached to either the northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast default angles. And essentially, they'll look like the images above, where you see your buildings on site and then the direct impact of those as a solar study. Additionally, next week, we're going to begin doing our rendering portion, our rendering assignment, I should say. So I've left you a few options at the bottom, and I'd like you guys to install one of these before next week. The install process sometimes can be a little tedious to get it working correctly, so we want to make sure we get this started ahead of time. The first is V-Ray for Rhino, which has a both Mac and PC version available. There is a 30-day free trial, and that's what I'd recommend getting, is we don't need to actually purchase anything at this time. If you like the software, you're welcome to purchase it. The next is Thea for Rhino, which is another rendering plugin. This unfortunately only has a PC version, but is free for students without that 30-day trial. It's just free for students. I believe it give you a year license at a time. Either way, there are some advantages and disadvantages to each. V-Ray for Rhino is probably the sort of industry standard and most common rendering engine, and has been for quite some time. However, there are some downsides to it as well. It is, I would say, one of the more complicated rendering engines and one of the more complicated softwares that you will probably ever try to learn in school. There are a huge amount of settings to fiddle with in order to get it to produce the images that you want. And learning it can be quite a challenging learning curve. So that's the first option. Again, for what we need for this particular course, it shouldn't be too bad to get through it, but it is something to be aware of, that if you want to sort of continue learning the software, V-Ray does have a very high sort of threshold to learn to become, pretty good at it. Thea for Rhino, on the other hand, the advantages there are, one, it's free, so you don't actually run out of that 30-day trial and have to purchase the software. It is, in my opinion, quite a bit simpler to use and quite a bit simpler to get used to. So you can choose either. Of course, if you are running Rhino for Mac, the Thea is not an option. I will be demoing both, so if you are interested in using either, you could potentially install both, although that can slow down your computer having multiple renders installed at once, but it is an option for you. The final option is to actually not install either of these, but instead set up remote access to the DAAP computer lab. Essentially, this allows you to remote into the computers that they have in DAAP and use their installed V-Ray for Rhino and Rhino files that are already on that computer. There are some advantages here and some disadvantages. The big advantage is you're using a full desktop that is offsite, that has, it's a pretty powerful desktop and is likely faster than most of the laptops. So this would definitely be something to consider if you are working off a laptop that you know to be maybe a little underpowered for normal tasks. Rendering is a very power-dependent computer activity that we do. The faster your computer, the less time it will take, the less likely it's going to crash. So this can be a very good option for those people. It does allow you to remote into a PC that has V-Ray for Rhino installed. So you don't have to worry about actually getting that set up, and it is free for all of you. There are some major disadvantages, though. You are going to be essentially remoting into a computer that could be hundreds or maybe even thousands of miles away. So your internet speed and connection to that computer will make a big difference in the experience of using it. The next will be, there are a limited number of computers available for you to use, and we are sharing them not just with our class, but also all of DAAP. So not everyone in this class will be able to sign in to these at once. So there may be some issues there, but I think for the most part, installing on your laptop is going to be a fine option for most people. This is just a sort of third option for you. There are, of course, many other rendering options out there other than the two I've listed, V-Ray for Rhino and Thea. Maxwell is another great option. Octane is another great one. And there are dozens of others. Most don't have Mac versions in general. And each of the others have their own sort of downsides to them. So these are the ones that I've sort of chosen to be the easiest to start with, at least. And I'll talk more about the other options next week when we get to that assignment. So for next week, what you'll need to do is obviously install all the files that are going to be required for this assignment and complete this assignment. Well, you'll have 3 isometric views that you'll save off and save into a single PDF. And that'll be your submission for assignment 10. And then also get installed one of these options below. And you can also talk with your GA, and they might give you some direction as to which one would be best for you to install. I'm also happy to discuss. So next, I'm just going to go to, this is the Ladybug Tools website. So Ladybug is free, and it's actually a set of tools. And you see this little chart here that actually gives you an idea of what the capabilities of each of these are and how they're interrelated. So Ladybug is the basic tool, but there's also Honeybee, Butterfly, and Dragonfly. Essentially, they all tend to work towards environmental analysis and or environmental design as a sort of driver in Rhino through Grasshopper. We are going to be sticking just with using Ladybug to keep things simple. The other tools, of course, have their own value, but we're just not going to be using them right now. So I wanted to mention Butterfly because we are going to be doing a windrose diagram, which just gives us the direction of wind on site. If we wanted to go more specific, this is the plugin that we want to use. This actually allows you to take into consideration the buildings, neighboring buildings on site, and actually figure out the wind patterns as they would move across the site. It's quite a bit more complicated, so we're going to not use that one for now. But just to show you Ladybug, these are the sort of default general capabilities that Ladybug has, mostly concerned with sort of solar analysis and solar studies. Show shadows, thermal energy, radiation energy, all that kind of stuff. So to get Ladybug installed, the website Food for Rhino has plugins for both Rhino and Grasshopper, and this is the best place to get these sort of things. It is, again, free to download. You want to get, currently the version is the 1.09 version. So you'll have to create an account that is also free for Food for Rhino, and you'll be able to log in and download this. I have left links to the installation steps. So this is the Mac installation. It tells you all the steps you have to go through. It's not too bad. There's also the optional step down here that lists the install radiance, and that's something you'll want to complete. So the Windows install is quite similar, and it also lists the install radiance option. So again, you'll want to complete that for both Mac and PC. This is the Radiance version that is currently the full release that's recommended. For Mac users, you can download the OS X version, and Windows users can get the Windows version. Next up, so this is V-Ray for Rhino. It's made by Chaos Group. With any of these sort of rendering engines, you always want to download from the official website. So Chaos Group is the creator of Rhino, or V-Ray, I should say. They make V-Ray for a number of different products, including Revit, Rhino, SketchUp, Maya, quite a few. They are essentially one of the largest rendering engines that are available, most widely used, and they've been around for quite a while. A lot of the film industry will use this software, as well as a lot of architecture firms. So again, you can get a free trial here. It lasts you 30 days, and you should be able to complete the assignment with that trial. Next is Thea. As mentioned, you can get a student version that you'll be able to find on the website. It's similar. Both of them are going to be able to create pretty realistic renderings. And again, you can talk with your GA about which one you should install, which one you'd prefer to do. V-Ray does both Mac and PC, so that is a limit, whereas Thea allows you to do only PC. So the DAAP Computer Lab currently has 42 computers available. You can basically use the link that's provided to get access to this and essentially set up a connection to each one of these. At the top of this link, there are instructions on how to do this on a PC, on a Mac, and the various links you'll need to get this set up. So just to give you an idea of the sort of output, so here we have essentially kind of chaotic looking Grasshopper definition right now, where our output is going to be the sort of solar analysis with this guy right here. So we can see that we have all red on top of these little building volumes, indicating that's where we're getting most of the sort of solar energy. We have the windrose diagram, which is partially obscured by these buildings right now, but there it is. And the shadow study. Again, I will go over how to create this what looks like a chaotic mess, and I'll try to do so in a less chaotic looking way during the demo. But that's going to be it for this one. So talk with your GAs about software and getting it installed. Try to have at least at bare minimum all the Ladybug components installed before Thursday's class. That way, if you do run into issues, the GAs will be there to assist you and help with that install process. But ideally, it'd be good to get a start on the assignment as well, just so you can start trying things out and find those issues before it's too late. All right, thanks guys.